So after a pretty quiet week with only one tournament happening this week that it was worth any points, that was the Monte Carlo Masters, where the ATP side of things was played, and that was the only tournament really on the men's side, except for challenger events. On the WTA, there was actually no changes because they all played Billie Jean King Cup or had a week off. So it's been a bit of a weird week, but of course, big tournament on the men's side. Let's go have a look at who won that tournament and also what it meant for the rankings. Of course, the Monte Carlo Masters was the only event of the week, and Carlos Alcaraz taking out Musetti in the final, 3-6, 6-1, 6-love to lift his first Monte Carlo, and he got a big boost in the rankings because of that. But also Musetti making the final, he also got a boost thanks to that. All right, let's have a look at the players outside the top 10 that went up in the rankings this week. So Musetti, he almost cracks the top 10. He comes in at number 11 in the world. Career high for him, which is 5 spots higher than last week. For Kina, he made the semi-finals this week. He went up 12 spots, number 30 in the world. And Altmaier, after having a very nice run through the qualifiers, he went up 16 spots, number 68 in the world. So some players there that did really well this week, getting a massive boost. Players who went down to the rankings this week outside the top 10. Pirikar, he goes down 4 spots, number 34 in the world. Chorich, he went down 12 spots outside the top 100 at 109 in the world. Even though he's been doing really well in the challenges, it hasn't been enough to keep him in the top 100. And Nagel, he went down 27 spots to 171 in the world. So some players there that lost points from this time last year dropped down the ranks. All right, let's have a look at the WTA side of things because there was no change because there were no points at stake. Sabalenka, she stays at 1, with Swiatek at 2, Pegula at 3, and Gauff at 4. Keys comes in at 5, with Paolini at 6, Andreeva at 7, Zhang at 8, Badosa at 9, and Raducanu comes in at number 10. But of course, we've got Stuttgart coming up this week, and a lot of those top 10 players are playing in Stuttgart. So expect some changes for sure to the rankings this time next week. Race of the finals, also no changes. Nobody could add any points. Sabalenka staying at number 1 and Keys at 2, Andreeva at 3 and Swiatek at 4, Pegula at 5 with Anisimova at 6, Towson at 7, Navarro at 8, Raducanu at 9, and Badosa rounds out the top 10 for this week. But again, like I said, 500 points on the line in Stuttgart, and a lot of those names are playing in Stuttgart. It's going to be really interesting to see how this looks in a week's time. Over on the men's side of things, now we did have some changes because, of course, Monte Carlo being a 1,000 event, a lot of points on the line, but nothing up the top with Sinner staying at 1. We did have a change to the number 2 spot with Zverev dropping down to number 3 and Alcaraz, the champion of Monte Carlo, going up to number 2 and overtaking Zverev. So we'll see whether or not it stays like that with Sinner number 1 and Alcaraz at 2, or if Zverev can get into some form, maybe regain that number 2 spot before the French Open in a couple of months' time. Fritz, he stays at 4 with Djokovic at 5 and Draper at 6. Demonor, he goes up to number 7 after having a really good week in Monte Carlo. Rublev also went up to number 8. Medvedev went up to number 9, back into the top 10 for the first time in a week or so. Ruud drops down number 10 after losing all the points from the final he made last year. And Tsitsipas drops out of the top 10 completely after failing to defend the points that he earned from winning this title. He's dropped down 8 spots outside the top 10. So some big changes there at the bottom of the top 10, mainly to the 2 finalists that made the finals last year and didn't quite replicate that this year. Having a look at the race of the finals now, and we have a new person up the top. Carlos Alcaraz, he takes the top spot off of Jannik Sinner, who has held that spot for pretty much the entire season. He goes up 4 spots into the top spot for the race of the finals after winning 1,000 points in Monte Carlo, pushing Sinner down to 2. Zverev goes down to number 3. Draper goes down to 4, and Djokovic goes down to number 5. Demonor, he goes up 3 spots into that number 6 spot, pushing Mensik down to number 7. Fakina goes up 10 spots into that number 8 spot, which pushes Auger-Aliassime down to 9. Shelton goes down to 10, and Paul drops out of the top 10 completely. So, for the first time in a long time, we have a new player leading the race to the finals, and that is Carlos Alcaraz. Of course, Jannik Sinner will not be able to play for a couple more events, but he will be back in Rome. So, Alcaraz has got to make the most of it over the next couple of weeks to gain as many points as possible before Sinner's return and try and keep that top spot if he can. So there it is. Not too much to talk about this week. Monte Carlo being the only tournament worth talking about rankings-wise. Of course, the Billie Jean King Cup, that was also being played, but not worth any points, so there's nothing going to change in the rankings there. But let me know down in the comments below. What's the biggest takeaway from Monte Carlo? Was it the fact that Alcaraz got the win and has really kicked off the clay court season very, very well by winning that title? Of course, Jannik Sinner, he will be back in a couple of weeks' time. He won't be playing, obviously, in Barcelona or Munich this week. He won't be able to play Madrid, but he will be playing Rome in a couple of weeks. He'll be back before we know it. And what about Zverev and Djokovic? They didn't really have a good Monte Carlo. Not a great start to their clay court seasons, but there it is. They are the rankings for this week. More to come next week with some big tournaments.